vision and implementation in the Berkshire region of the US. You've got 20 to 25 minutes to do this, and then 5 to 10 minutes of discussion. Okay? Welcome.
Lovely to be here, lovely to see old friends. I want to start with the next slide, which is Bob Swan and Fritz Schumacher. Bob Swan started the Schumacher Center in 1980, but his economic education came much earlier. It came in prison in World War II. He was a conscientious objector and spent 2.5 years in prison because he didn't want to be forced to kill. And in prison, there were other conscientious objectors, including Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin was the famous theorist who taught Martin Luther King nonviolent action. And so Bob in prison with other COs spent a lot of time trying to figure out what are the root causes of war. And he came up with 3 important root causes. One is the commodification of land that allows a resource needed by all to be held by a few so that the benefits become unequal. So he committed a good part of the rest of his life to land reform. But he also felt a root cause of war was the centralization of currency issue with nation states, because that allowed nation states to issue currency for non-productive purposes such as fighting wars. So the other part of his life was committed to monetary reform. But he did it. Now, think of it. He was in prison for 2.5 years. He paid the ultimate price. He has no fear. He had no fear. He was willing to go way out to create a currency that he considered would hold value. He felt that was the important thing. If a currency held value, it would be preferred to a national currency devaluing. So that's what pushed him. That's what drove him. In his land reform work, he worked with Martin Luther King's cousin, Slater King, and they studied the lease agreements of the Jewish National Fund as a basis for the community land trust movement. There are now over 1,000 community land trusts in this country that hold land off the market and create affordable access. He also worked with Vinoba Bhabhe, who was Gandhi's successor, who walked village to village, create a land reform movement in India. Famously spinning at every village he stopped in. Here are Bob's. Did you go? Pardon? Yeah. My own relation to this work is different. It comes from thinking of economics as actually a lovely activity, kind of a sophisticated, high value activity. Economics is actually nothing more than human ingenuity organizing labor to transform natural resources into products for one another. It's that simple. It's that beautiful. And yet, our very economic systems that commodify land, that abstract money, create a distance from true economic cycles. So my own motivation comes out of trying to have simple and, as it were, clean economic transactions again, so we can express our best selves in relation to the land and to each other. It doesn't come out of a short-term social initiative. It comes out of a long-term wanting to create new economic forms. I'm also was pleased to be mentored and inspired by Jane Jacobs, who brought the concept of import replacement and the idea of economic systems kind of bubbling up and being alive and recreating themselves. So in the Berkshires, at the Schumacher Center, we had to think, how do we actually implement a new type of money? The most appropriate way for money to go into circulation is to issue for productive loans to the farmer in the spring for seeds that result in 10 times the worth of the seeds in the fall. There you've created new value through actually issuing currency. And once that principle is understood, then currency can be issued out of nothing. You don't need to take saved money if you're truly understanding the principle of productive loans. So SHARE was a local loan program. Essentially, our members opened an account at a local bank, and they were used to collateralize loans that the bank wouldn't normally make, to a goat farm, to a knitter who needed a machine to do her sweaters. 25 loans, all repaid. If there were problems, the local community had supported them, and they helped out by supporting those businesses. So the scale was correct, too. There's the goat cheese. And then a deli came to us, favorite deli in town. Frank Tutorielli ran it, popular hangout. But he applied for a loan from a bank when he wanted to move to a new location, and he was turned down. So he came to SHARE and said, how about a SHARE loan? And we said, you don't need our pool of lenders. You have your own pool and your customers borrow from them. And he said, how do I do that? And we said, issue your own money. So he issued deli dollars. We told him to sell him a $10 deli dollar for $10. He said, nah, that's too good a deal for me. So he sold a $10 deli dollar for $8 to be redeemed after they moved to the new location. But they didn't want all the redemption coming the first month. So the notes were dated over time. He essentially structured his own loan repayment schedule. Let's see, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, all the major TV stations came to see this phenomenon in New England of a local guy doing well. Stephanie, you remember that? Yeah. And then deli dollars grew into Berkshire Farm Preserve notes. 2 farm stands issued their own currency. They sold them in the fall when they needed to pay for costs of greenhouse heating over the winter, and then redeemed them in the summer when the produce came in. And then that grew into an effort suggested by the banks. It said, Susan, one of the bankers said, Susan, why are we doing these part-time currencies? Let's do a year-round currency. And we said, yeah. We said, how would we do that? What an interesting idea. And so they in part